The chamber of the Galactic Council was an imposing sight, a vast, circular space, lit by shimmering holograms that hovered over a central platform. The hum of alien voices filled the air, each representative speaking in hushed tones, waiting for the day's session to begin. Species from every corner of the galaxy, scaled, winged, and bipedal, gathered to discuss matters of galactic importance. Yet, as the doors slid open and Ambassador Maya Sterling of Earth stepped into the room, the chatter died instantly. Maya was human, small compared to the towering Valdi delegation seated nearby, but her presence commanded attention. She wore a sleek black uniform, the emblem of the Earth Federation boldly pinned to her chest. Her steps were firm, each one deliberate, as she moved toward the central podium where the council's leaders were seated. The air was thick with anticipation, an unspoken understanding that something significant was about to unfold. Her eyes swept over the chamber, her gaze lingering for a moment on High Counselor Eritjaw, the Valdi representative. He sat poised, his emerald green scales gleaming under the artificial lighting. Eritjaw's reputation as a shrewd politician was well known across the galaxy, and his race's strength was unmatched by any of the smaller factions. The Valdi had long considered themselves the dominant force, and to them, humanity's rise had been an annoyance at best, a threat at worst. Maya's heart beat in her chest, but she refused to let the anxiety show. She had prepared for this moment for years. Her speech was ready. Her words, chosen carefully. It was time to confront the council, time to demand justice. A brief silence filled the chamber as Maya took her place at the podium. She adjusted the comm device clip to her collar and inhaled deeply, letting the air of the council chamber fill her lungs. "I stand before you today not just as the ambassador of Earth," Maya began, her voice calm yet resolute, "but as a representative of all humanity. You have heard the reports. The attacks on our colonies. The destruction. The lives lost." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. Across the room, the heads of many species turned in curiosity, though none spoke. The Valdi were watching closely. "There is no doubt in my mind who is responsible," Maya continued, her voice steady, but tinged with something else, something that set the room on edge. "You attacked our home." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the room. Some of the representatives gasped, others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Maya could feel the eyes of the council bearing down on her, but she held her ground. She could see the Valdi delegation exchanging whispered words. Eritjaw's eyes narrowed, his long, reptilian tongue flicking in annoyance. "You accuse us?" Eritjaw's voice was smooth, calculated. His words, though cold, carried a certain gravity. "Of what? You have no proof. Only baseless claims from your primitive military." "Primitive?" Maya's lip curled in disdain. "You think humanity is weak? We've been surviving in the harshest conditions the galaxy has to offer, expanding, evolving, and now, when we demand justice for what was done to us, you mock us?" A murmur of agreement rippled from a few of the council members, especially from those who had begun to see the potential of humanity's rise in the galaxy. Maya could see them shifting, leaning in, her words starting to take root. "You are no longer the only power in this galaxy, Eritjaw," Maya said. Her voice, though soft, carried a weight of finality. "We are done being silent. We demand answers. And we demand action." Eritjaw's pupils constricted, and for a moment, the tension between them crackled. "This is outrageous. Do you truly think you can challenge the Valdi? We are the oldest and most powerful species in this galaxy. Your people, fragile as they are, have no place in such a conflict." "I don't need to be the strongest to fight for what's mine," Maya responded, her words deliberate, punctuated by the stillness of the room. "I just need the courage to stand up for it. The courage to make you listen." As she spoke, something shifted in the room. It was subtle, but palpable, a quiet recognition that Maya wasn't here to play by the Council's rules. The truth of humanity's struggle was undeniable, and the walls of political posturing couldn't shield the Valdi forever. The Council, despite its attempts at neutrality, had been put on notice. Her gaze met Eritja's once more. This time, it was the Valdi who blinked first, his composure faltering just a fraction. "You will regret this," Eritja hissed, his voice laced with venom. Maya didn't flinch. "No, we won't." The room was still for a moment longer, and then, with a soft chime, the council leader, a towering figure of blue skin and iridescent wings, leaned forward. "Enough. The accusations have been made. We will deliberate." As the council members began to discuss amongst themselves, Maya stepped back from the podium, her mind racing. This was just the beginning, but in her chest, a flame of hope had ignited. The battle had been joined. The first strike had been made, and humanity was no longer going to stay silent. The hum of the shuttle's engines was a constant in Maya's ears as she stared out of the narrow porthole, watching the stars streak by in a blur of silver and violet. The vastness of space had always awed her, but today it felt like an oppressive weight pressing down on her chest. She had spoken the truth, made the accusation, and now there were consequences. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity's survival had just become a matter of urgency. Her fingers drummed against the metal armrest, betraying the restlessness she felt inside. The council's response had been as expected: deliberation, debate, and a promise to look into her claims. But Maya knew it wasn't enough. The Valdi would stall, twist, and eventually bury the truth if she didn't act. She had no intention of waiting for the council to decide whether or not Earth deserved protection. "You did well," a voice from behind her broke the silence. It was Lieutenant Commander James Holt, her trusted right hand, and the only human officer she trusted in the diplomatic circles. Tall and broad-shouldered, with short-cropped dark hair and a stern expression, Holt had been at her side since the beginning of the crisis. He had served as her military advisor, but in this war of words, he had been invaluable in strategizing the next move. Maya didn't turn to face him. She kept her eyes fixed on the stars, thinking of the colonies, the families torn apart by the Valdi's aggression. "We didn't come here to be praised," she said quietly. "We came here to make them listen. Now we need to ensure they do." Holt stepped forward, leaning against the console beside her. "I know. But you're pushing them to a point they won't easily back down from." Maya's hand clenched into a fist. "I'm not asking them to back down. I'm asking them to stand up for what's right." She paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. "If they won't, we will." James nodded slowly. "We've got the support of a few key council members. But there's more at play here than just the Valdi. The Hraxians won't take kindly to this either." Maya finally turned to face him, her eyes sharp. "Let them come. If the Hraxians want to see what a united human front looks like, they'll get an education." The lieutenant's brow furrowed, but he said nothing. He had seen her determination in action before, and there was little that could sway her once her mind was set. But the danger of what they were about to face weighed on him. The Valdi were not just a powerful military force. They were a well-connected faction with influence that stretched across the galaxy. And the Hraxians? Even more dangerous. They saw diplomacy as weakness. "We'll need more than a speech this time, Maya," Holt said, his tone darkening. "We'll need proof. We'll need a strategy. A way to hit them where it hurts." "Working on it," Maya replied. "We've been gathering intel, and the Valdi have been careless. It's only a matter of time before they make a mistake." As the shuttle hurtled through the blackness of space toward Earth's Federation headquarters, Maya's thoughts were a blur. She knew the time to act had arrived, and she needed to make her move before the Valdi got too comfortable with their position. The words of Eritja echoed in her mind. You have no place in such a conflict. But Maya had learned a long time ago that the Valdi couldn't see what humanity was capable of. She had faced worse odds. They all had. The shuttle's cockpit door slid open with a soft hiss, and a technician entered, his face grim. He stood at attention before Maya, eyes avoiding her for a moment as if weighing how to address her. Ambassador Sterling, he began, his voice low. We've intercepted a transmission. The Valdi are rallying their forces near the Talvar system. We believe they're planning an assault on one of our colonies. Maya's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just posturing. The Valdi were mobilizing for war. Damn it, Holt muttered under his breath. They're moving faster than we thought. Maya stood up, her mind already racing. We need to notify the Council immediately. We can't let them claim we're the aggressors. This has to be on their terms, no more secrets. We've already sent word, the technician replied. But they won't act without full confirmation. We need eyes on the ground. Maya's eyes narrowed. Then let's give them eyes. She turned back to Holt. Prepare a team. I want to be there before they strike. Holt nodded sharply. Understood, Ambassador. As he left to make the necessary arrangements, Maya allowed herself a moment to breathe. The tension was growing, and with each passing minute, the situation was getting closer to the breaking point. But she wasn't going to wait for the galaxy to decide her fate. She would fight, no matter the cost. The Talvar system was a quiet place, nestled in a far corner of the galaxy, its star a faint ember among the vast sea of distant suns. The planets here were barren, cold rocks with little to offer, but they were strategically located. To the Valdi, Talvar was an ideal staging ground. And now, to Maya Sterling, it was a place that held humanity's future in the balance. Maya sat in the command chair of the Terra's Hope, the Federation's latest battle cruiser. The sterile hum of the ship's engines echoed through the bridge as the crew worked in silence. They were moving at full speed toward Talvar's outer rim, where the first signs of the Valdi fleet had been detected. The pressure weighed heavily on her chest, but her expression remained calm. She had faced countless negotiations, but nothing had prepared her for this. This wasn't diplomacy. This wasn't about words or promises. This was about saving lives. Ambassador, Holt's voice broke through the stillness as he entered the bridge, his uniform crisp and his eyes steely. We've received word from the fleet scouts. The Valdi are assembling. It's happening faster than we expected. Maya's fingers tightened around the armrests of her chair. How many ships? She asked, keeping her tone steady despite the knot of anxiety forming in her stomach. Too many, Holt replied grimly. We've got the numbers, but they have the experience. And they won't hesitate to strike first. She looked out at the view screen, where the distant stars seemed to shimmer with an eerie calm. But behind that calm, she could almost feel the heat of the coming conflict. The Valdi weren't just any enemy. They were calculated, ruthless, and they had underestimated humanity once. Have we heard anything from the Council? Maya asked. Holt shook his head. They're still debating, but they won't act without direct proof. It's up to us to gather it before we're buried under a Valdi assault. Maya's lips thinned. Then we get it ourselves. The tension in the room was palpable as the crew continued their work, the sound of footsteps and beeps filling the space. Maya's mind raced. They were flying blind, relying on fragmented intelligence and the hope that they could disrupt the Valdi before it was too late. But hope was a fragile thing, and in the void of space, it wouldn't be enough. Suddenly, the ship's sensors flared to life. The atmosphere in the bridge shifted, each crew member instinctively turning their focus to the screen. There they are, the sensor officer said, voice tight with tension. A fleet of sleek Valdi ships, massive, intimidating warships, emerged from the blackness of space. They glinted like steel knives against the inky backdrop, their shadows growing as they neared the Talvar system's innermost planet. Maya's breath caught in her throat. They weren't just prepared for an attack, they were executing one. The Valdi were already making their move. "What's our status?" Maya asked, her voice steady despite the knot that tightened further in her gut. "We're within striking distance of the planet's atmosphere," the officer responded. "But the Valdi will be here in moments. They have a strong fleet, more than we anticipated." Holt stepped forward, his eyes scanning the fleet. "This is it. No more time for waiting. We move now." Maya nodded sharply, her gaze hardening. She couldn't afford to hesitate. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," she ordered, her voice cutting through the tension. "Get us close enough to scan their ships. I want to know their positions, their weak points." She could hear the subtle shift in the crew as they adjusted to the urgency of her command. They worked with a practiced fluidity, each member of the team playing their part. Maya's pulse quickened as the ship's engines roared to life beneath her feet. But before the Terra's Hope could make its move, the communication system crackled to life. A new transmission flickered across the screens, its source unmistakable. "Ambassador," Arajah's voice came through, smooth as silk but laced with malice. "I hope you've come to your senses. This war, this foolish rebellion, it doesn't have to happen. You could still back down. Spare your people from this needless destruction." The message was chilling in its calmness. Maya could almost see the smug smile on his face as he spoke. "We won't back down, Arajah," Maya replied, her voice tight but resolute. "This isn't about avoiding war anymore. This is about survival." Arajah's laugh crackled through the transmission, a sound filled with disdain. "Survival? You humans are not prepared for the kind of war we will bring. But I suppose it matters little. You'll learn soon enough." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving only the hum of the ship's systems in its wake. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya took a steadying breath, her resolve hardening. "Helm, bring us in closer. We don't have the luxury of time anymore." The Terra's Hope surged forward, racing toward the heart of the conflict as the Valdi fleet loomed larger in the distance. Maya knew this was only the beginning. Whatever the Valdi had planned, humanity was about to show them what it meant to be underestimated. As they moved toward the heart of the Talvar system, Maya's fingers tightened once more around the armrests, bracing for the storm that was about to break. The war had begun. The Talvar system was no longer silent. Maya Sterling gripped the armrests of her command chair as the Terra's Hope surged forward, her heart pounding against her ribs. The view screen ahead flickered, showing the massive Valdi fleet, now fully arrayed against them. Each ship glinted like a predator's eyes, just waiting for the right moment to strike. Maya's fingers were tight around the metal, her pulse thrumming in sync with the rhythm of her ship. Her crew, usually a calm and collected bunch, now worked with a desperate intensity, their movements brisk and efficient. Yet beneath their disciplined actions, Maya could feel the undercurrent of fear. She knew it because it mirrored her own. It was the fear of the unknown, the fear of fighting an enemy that had been underestimated for so long. "Contact in 20 seconds. The sensor officer's voice cracked through the tension in the air. "They're locking weapons. Evasive," Maya shouted, her command ringing out with the force of necessity. The ship jolted as the helm pilot veered sharply to the left. The Terra's Hope swerved, narrowly avoiding the first salvo of plasma fire from the Valdi ships. The shockwave from the near miss rocked the ship, sending a shudder through the hull. Maya's stomach churned. She could already feel the weight of the battle, the knowledge that each passing second meant more lives at risk. "Return fire," she ordered. The bridge erupted into motion as the weapons officer fired the first round from their laser turrets. Brilliant green beams cut through the void, hitting their marks. The Valdey fleet retaliated with overwhelming force. A streak of plasma burst across the space where the Terra's Hope had just been, and the ship shuddered again. Maya could hear the muffled alarms blaring beneath her feet. The ship was taking damage. "Shields holding at 60%, the systems officer reported. Her eyes flashed to the view screen. The Valdey ships were moving into formation, positioning themselves for a final strike. They were far more tactical than she'd anticipated. "Get us closer to the enemy flagship," Maya commanded. "We need to find their weak points now." Holt, who had been monitoring the enemy fleet, turned to face her. "Ambassador, they're already locking onto us. We'll be sitting ducks if we move in." Maya's jaw tightened. She knew what he was saying, but she couldn't afford to wait. If they didn't disrupt the Valdey command ship, everything they'd worked for would collapse. "We'll take the risk. Get us in close," she ordered. The ship groaned as it powered forward, its engines roaring like a beast ready to pounce. Maya felt the shift in the air, the heavy, electrified silence as the crew braced for the worst. The Terra's Hope sliced through the stars, darting toward the center of the Valdey formation. Suddenly, the communications system came to life. "Ambassador Sterling," Eritja's voice rang through the speakers, smooth and mocking. "I see you've chosen the hard way. How typical of your kind. But this will not be your victory. Your species is too fractured, too young to stand against us." Maya's eyes narrowed, the weight of his words sinking deep into her chest. She'd heard the threat in his voice, but what truly stung was his certainty. The Valdey had always underestimated humanity's resilience. She would make sure he'd regret that mistake. "You've underestimated us, Eritja," Maya said, her voice cold and unyielding. "And you'll learn that humans never back down. We don't quit, we fight." There was a brief silence, and Maya could almost picture Eritja's expression, the fleeting hint of doubt behind his arrogance. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by his smooth, unshakable composure. "We'll see about that," he replied, his voice flat. The transmission cut off. The Terra's Hope was now within range of the Valdey flagship. Maya's heart hammered in her chest, her mind racing as she calculated their next move. If they could disable its weapons or communications, they could cripple the Valdey's coordination. "Prepare the boarding teams," Maya ordered, standing from her chair. "We take the ship now. Holt, you're with me." Holt gave a brief nod, his usual calm replaced with an edge of readiness. Maya felt the tension building to a breaking point as the Terra's Hope closed in on the Valdey flagship. The roar of the engines grew louder, almost deafening as they broke through the perimeter of enemy fire. The moment the ship was close enough, the docking bays opened with a mechanical hiss, and the transport pods shot forward, darting through the vastness of space toward their target. Maya's gaze remained fixed on the bridge view screen as she gripped the railing, the ship swerving again to avoid a barrage of incoming fire. "All hands, prepare for impact," the intercom blared. "Brace yourselves." The Terra's Hope was nearing the final stretch, and Maya could see the shadows of the Valdey flagship growing larger, their looming, jagged hull filled with weapons. The enemy was ready for them, but Maya would ensure they were prepared too. The Terra's Hope was within striking distance. It was now or never.